The 8th episode of the 3rd season of House of the Dragon is here. After a week of silence, we return to King's Landing, where we can see Maester Orwyll running through the corridors towards the Queen's quarters. Rhaenyra wakes up agitated, and later we can see her arrive at Daemon's room to tell him that Sunfire has been resurrected, which means Aegon is still alive. Her husband finds this story hard to believe. He himself saw Sunfire rotting in a wasteland, and he asks her to be a bit more rational, but the news has already been verified. The dragon incinerated the soldiers of Motown, and Aegon made an appearance before this happened. What is worse is that several ravens have already been intercepted with news of the rightful king's return. The news of a king who has risen from the dead, along with his dragon, is gaining momentum, and there is no doubt that his next stop will be the throne. Right at this moment, the Great Sept is filled with people calling for the return of the rightful king and asking the Faith to tell them whom they should lead after she has been through so much to get here. Her husband tells her that the throne is maintained with power, and there is no one in the 7 kingdoms who has more power than she does, and that is what they will use. They are the last remnant of old Valyria, and that is worth more than any miracle. Previous trials mean nothing if she is not willing to show that she has the strength required to keep the throne, and finally decides to listen to her husband. He tells her to send the dragon seeds to watch the dragon pit. If Aegon shows up, they will kill him. He wants to be the one to go toward Tumbleton and search house by house until all the high towers keeping the people subjugated are dead. Upon leaving her husband's quarters, the queen is in war mode when Baela approaches to ask what will happen to her grandfather. He is still a prisoner of the high towers, and she does not want him to die in the crossfire. Rhaenyra reminds her that Corlys made his choice, and she has other priorities. It is here that the young woman decides to answer back to an official order from the queen and make her see that she is using people while they are useful and then abandoning them. The only reason she is still here is because she needs her dragon. The queen reminds her that she is still here, even after what happened at the Gullet, so she cannot dare to judge her decisions when she has made much worse ones. She is just an insolent girl who thinks she knows what she is doing or even understands sacrifice. In an instant, the queen grabs her face and calls her insolent, telling her she does not blame her. In fact, that runs in her blood, although she is basically warning her to watch her tongue or she will lose it. At the same time that happens, on the beach, the last men of Velaryon arrive to ask what the plan is to rescue their Lord Corlys, but Alan tells them that their task is to defend the city, since the queen for the moment has no plan that includes rescuing his father. In Tumbleton, Aemond has already learned of the movement of Rhaenyra's forces toward the city and has ordered his men to prepare for battle. Meanwhile, he must resolve an urgent matter. To be crowned king, Daemon must first be knighted, and it would be an honor for him to use his sword for such an event. Adopting the name they have been using for him, Sir Daeron the Daring, Illuminator of the Path. From the honorable ceremony we move to the tavern, where Ulf shows us that he has switched sides, as while enjoying a beer, he is insulting Daemon and telling him that soon the Queen of Bastards will feel the wrath and fire of his dragon for having lied to him. Back in King's Landing, Rhaenyra maintains her attitude and begins giving very important orders. First, she wants a full escort to travel to the Great Hall, because today they will anoint her as the new queen, and the Faith will not be able to refuse to recognize her. In addition, she orders her men to go to Mysaria's room and gather all her things, since her service is over, and she will travel to Pentos that night with enough gold for a mansion, in gratitude for her services. Although Mysaria wants to talk to the queen, she is not allowed to, as her order has been very clear. She must leave at dusk, and the person giving her the news confesses that he does not understand what is happening and asks her to take care of herself. In the castle gardens, Helaena has not eaten a bite for 2 days, and she looks quite emaciated. However, when the officer informs her that her free hour is over, she ends up bumping into Mysaria, and part of her vision comes true. In just a few seconds, Mysaria reveals to her that Aegon is still alive and that Sunfire has risen. Furthermore, she cannot trust the queen, and the child she carries in her womb will be the perfect hostage so they can assassinate her father. The soldiers drag her toward the cart, while Mysaria repeats to her over and over that she will never be free, not as long as they can use her. At that instant, the scene cuts, and we travel to Harrenhal, where Aemond cannot believe that his own mother poisoned him, and once again, Alice has saved his life. This has strengthened the feeling between them, and that is why they end up kissing. But the one who is no longer playing games is Rhaenyra, and when Helaena refuses to eat, she orders the guards to subdue her and pour the broth into her mouth until she finally swallows. It is a very harsh scene for everyone. And although before she would not be capable of doing these things, now she stands for a few seconds watching to assure Helaena that this will keep happening. She either eats the easy way or eats the hard way, since that child will come into this world and will be used as bait to lure its father, unless she marries him off first. Below, in the barracks, Adam has arrived and wants to know what plan his brother has to rescue their father, but Alan is using the Velaryon forces to defend the city, and for the moment, Corlys is not on his mind. This causes Adam to get a bit enraged, telling him that all he wants is for their father to die so he can take his place as Hand of the King. A few seconds later, the Queen comes out in her ceremonial attire to be escorted directly to the Great Sept, where the Faith will recognize her leadership by fair means or foul. Back in Tumbleton, Daemon realizes they are vastly outnumbered, and Aemond has begun to implement some strategies with which he does not agree. He is putting innocent children on the wall to prevent the dragons from attacking. His trusted man informs him that Ulf has not reported in, and his men lost sight of his dragon, which ends up infuriating him, since a dragon is an important asset, but he should never have trusted a drunkard, much less given him so much freedom. From the walls, Daemon can see the triumphant entrance of Daemon, who has arrived to lead the attack. As the flapping of Carax's wings kicks up the city's dust, Aemond wanders the streets looking for his ally, who is drunk in a tavern. Outside Tumbleton, Daemon has dismounted from his dragon, as this battle requires his personal touch. Carax's fire would be very useful, but it would end up incinerating both the enemy and the innocent children, so this time he will use his sword. When Roddy the Ruin reveals to him that Cole died in a ridiculous manner, his spirits lift, but one of his men informs him that a high tower soldier is approaching and bringing Lord Corlys with him. This turns out to be Wayne, who has a dagger at Corlys's ribs and has come to negotiate, or rather, to beg, since he is sure they would not survive a single day if the attack breaks out. Wayne confesses to him that Aemond has lost his mind. He is willing to sacrifice the lives of all those innocent people just to avoid admitting he has been defeated. But he is no fool and wants to return Corlys to them as a gift of good faith, so they will allow them to make amends for their mistake. But he wants something in return. He wants peace between the Hightowers and the Targaryens, through which they will name Daemon as Lord of Old Town. It is here that Corlys decides to speak and tell him that it would not be such a bad idea, since many of the houses on that side of the realm still hold to the old traditions that a woman cannot rule. With this, they not only ensure that Daemon will never be king, but that he can be the protector of the South alongside his dragon, and when the time comes, he can marry him to Rhaenyra, having a much more powerful alliance than the one that would be lost with a battle on this day, an alliance that will allow him to conquer the Vale and the Stormlands, something Daemon indeed wants, as for a long time he has been tired of settling for King's Landing and desires the whole world. It is a key decision. The only drawback to this perfect plan is that somewhere in these lands, Aegon is still alive, crawling with a crippled dragon. However, the decision belongs to Daemon at this moment. Before him lie two paths that end in the same place, with his wife on the Iron Throne. Only one spills blood on this day, while the other promises a husband for his daughter, to whom he also owes a much better life than the one she has had. But if Lord Corlys believed for a moment that he could get inside Daemon's mind to get him to do what he wants, he is gravely mistaken, as his next order is to take him prisoner and let Wayne leave, so he can warn his cousin that today he will die in the worst possible way. Before the battle begins, we travel to Harrenhal, where we can see that Aemond has just awoken from a nightmare, but he can hear the flapping of a dragon's wings and believes it to be his own. However, when he goes out into the ruins, he runs into his brother and the revelation that Sunfire can still fly. Aegon approaches slowly, while his brother collapses to the ground, repeating over and over that this is not possible. He should be dead, but with a slap, he brings him back to reality, and Aemond can do nothing other than apologize and beg for his forgiveness. But Aegon is not enjoying this vengeance, and although he has his sword and could cut off the usurper's head, he would feel no pleasure in doing so. Aemond tells him that he coveted what he had and judged his ability to rule. Those were the reasons for trying to kill him and take his place, so whatever punishment he receives, he is willing to accept it. At that instant, Aegon draws his sword and places it against his neck, right at the moment when Alis appears. Aegon tells her to get her things. They are going to Tumbleton, but Alis reveals to him that Aemond is in no condition, and worse yet, his dragon abandoned him. But that is no excuse, and Aegon orders Alis to be quiet, as she will not be part of this conversation. Then he reveals to his brother what is happening outside, since he has been on a little honeymoon during this time. First, they are going to find Vhagar, and then they will travel to Tumbleton, where that fool Aemond is supporting Daemon, the idiot boy who thinks he can be king, so together they will put him in his place. And then they will march on King's Landing under his banner, and when Rhaenyra's head is on a pike, they will talk about the forgiveness he has begged for so much. Back on the battlefield, Lord Tully tells him that he has analyzed the city thoroughly, and there is an area to the southeast that would be ideal for a fire attack. That will bring down their defenses, and they could have the city under the Queen's banners by dusk. However, there is a very important matter that he must give his men before the battle. Their swords and arrows must only harm the Hightowers. The realm is watching what is happening, and the Queen's moral stance cannot be called into question. It is here that one of the men appears and gives them the bad news. The southeast area they were intending to attack has been fortified with children on the walls, and many more sightings are being confirmed along the entire perimeter. Which means that if Daemon uses his dragon, he will break the rule he has just set for everyone. So now this will be a land battle, and Roddy the Ruin will lead the vanguard. His northerners will use their rage to strike terror into the heart of the enemy, using ladders to scale the wall and open the gate so the rest can pass through. Back in King's Landing, Rhaenyra has invaded the High Sept, along with Alan and his men, and this time she will not take no for an answer. The elders will recognize her reign, and she does not care about the rumors that Aegon is still alive. At that moment, Rhaenyra names him a traitor and orders Alan to execute the sentence, but the High Septon tells him that he is a holy man, and harming him will damn his soul to hell, causing Alan to hesitate for a second. However, Rhaenyra promises him he will be part of the new Valyria and forge a path by her side, with new gods, not elders. At that precise instant, Alan makes his choice and uses his sword to run through the most important man of the faith, staining his blade with holy blood and damning his future. Outside, Rhaenyra is delivering a speech to all the people who were waiting for news from the Great Sept, telling them that long before her father recognized him, her reign had already been prophesied, and that she was recognized by hundreds of lords who traveled thousands of leagues just to swear allegiance to her before the gods. After her speech, we return to the battlefield, where Daemon is ready to launch the attack, but first he makes sure to give them a war speech, a much more motivating one, telling them that today, even if they are mercenaries, they are the sons of the North and will be the ones to put an end to the Hightowers, pompous fools who have thought too highly of themselves for too long. He does not want their best, he wants their worst, that their screams instill fear into their hearts and accompany them into the fires of hell. Even Roddy the Ruin feels motivated by the speech and takes the lead, following northern tradition, where they combine the sound of their swords with drums, creating a rhythm of death that can be heard in the city. That sound is so terrifying that we can see a scene of children hiding behind the wall, wetting their pants and crying in fear. But even though the children are afraid, the Hightower soldiers stand firm and unleash a volley of arrows, as well as the catapults, finally starting the battle. At that moment, we can see Aemond furious because he has not managed to find Ulf, and one of his servants appears to tell him that the battle has begun and that negotiations have failed. But he had no idea of such negotiation, so he has realized that Daemon and Wayne betrayed him. Outside, the battle has begun. The northern men have reached the walls and set up ladders, making their attempt to climb, but the soldiers throw boiling oil and rocks at them, managing to carry out the perfect distraction while the rest of the forces attack from the south side. And a few seconds later, we can see that Roddy the Ruin is the first to scale the wall and spill Hightower blood. Unfortunately, he arrives too late, and the soldiers manage to light the trenches, burning many of his men. But the interesting part is that one of the servants approaches Daemon and tells him that he cannot find Ulf the White. So basically, Ulf has deserted, not from one side, but from both, and perhaps we will not see him in this battle. The unexpected event is that Hugh appears, riding his dragon, but he is supposed to be guarding King's Landing, not here in the battle. After a while, Daemon begins to lose patience upon realizing that Roddy has failed to open the gate, so he calls Caraxes to burn the entire middle section of the wall, unconcerned about the innocent children who were on it. In front of the main gate were a dozen children, and more than half were smart enough to run away, but 2 of them remained defending the gate, and Daemon had no other choice but to incinerate them. With the gate finally open, Daemon led the vanguard, but ended up running into a massive ambush, and the Hightower soldiers managed to knock him off his horse. A few seconds later, we can see that Aemond has finally managed to find Ulf, who had passed out drunk in a privy, and the stench was completely nauseating. The battle becomes even more cruel, and the fate of the city hangs in the balance. Furious, he ended up humiliating him far more than Daemon ever did, and after hitting him a couple of times, he told him to get on his beast and do his job. In the midst of battle, Daemon was slaying his enemies when he could see Hugh fighting alongside him, but shouting the name of his wife, whom he had come to rescue. Although Daemon was looking for Aemond, he ended up meeting his right-hand man, who is highly trained and will give him a good fight. While that happens, Ulf reaches his dragon, and the Hightower soldiers kill the boy who was guarding it. Outside, Ulf finally appears atop Silverwing, and Daemon's men celebrate his arrival. But a few seconds later, he turns around and orders his dragon to incinerate them all. When Aemond sees Silverwing burn his enemies to ashes, he is filled with excitement for the battle, but ends up running into Roddy, who is eager to kill him, and he has an advantage. The old man stinks so badly that he throws Aemond off balance and has him on the ropes, but Aemond draws his sword and runs him through the stomach, then severs his hand with a single blow. What Aemond did not expect was that the old man would use the blood pouring from his wound to blind him, and this disgusts him so much that he tries to flee. But Roddy pulls out a knife and drives it, well, you know where. At that precise instant, Ulf notices this, and seeing that Aemond is about to die and will not be able to fulfill his promise, decides to take revenge for the humiliation, and orders his dragon to incinerate them both. Roddy and Aemond end up being destroyed by dragonfire, as well as a large portion of the streets, as Ulf has decided to unleash his wrath upon the entire city. This destruction reaches Daemon, who was about to be killed by Roddy, but the collapse ends up saving his life. However, when he manages to get up, he realizes the vast destruction caused by the dragon. Hundreds or perhaps thousands of innocent people have been killed, and the queen will not be pleased with this at all. Despite this, Daemon continues fighting until Corlys finds him and reveals that Ulf has just betrayed them. The city is lost, and they must leave. In the sky, we can see Caraxes following Silverwing and using his fire to keep him at bay, but the damage is already done, and what dragonfire causes cannot be undone. Among the dead are Aemond and Hugh's wife, who cannot help but scream with all his strength upon finding her corpse. As for Wayne, he manages to get up, but there is no sign of Darren anywhere. The third season comes to an end, with a scene of the city in flames. While on the battlefield, the dead are beyond count, but one death that truly hits hard happens in King's Landing, when the queen is informed that Helaena has thrown herself from her window. The only thing she left behind was her loom, foretelling what was going to happen. But what interests Rhaenyra is the image of herself sitting on the Iron Throne, as a sign that she is destined to rule the Seven Kingdoms and much more, so she simply closes the window and delivers the season finale.